You are listening to WebfitNews Live Radio. News that fits your fast life.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a stack of sources on a topic that is, well, just perpetually confusing for so many people.
It really is.
We're talking about flying from New Zealand to, say, India or anywhere in that region and having a stopover in Australia.
Yep, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth. That little stop is a huge choke point for administrative headaches. Our mission today is to just cut right through that for you.
And the big question, the one we need to answer fast because it trips almost everyone up, is this. If you live here in New Zealand, you might be a permanent resident, maybe on a work visa, and you're only stopping for like 3 hours. Do you actually need an Australian visa?
Your gut says no, right?
Me gut says absolutely not. But our sources say yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely yes, and it all depends on one single factor.
And that factor isn't your residency status here in New Zealand, and it's not even always about how long you're stopping over. It all comes down to the passport you hold. So we're going to get into the specifics of the free transit visa, that's the subclass 771, and then talk about why some flight logistics might force you to get the more complex and paid visitor visa, the subclass 600.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start right at the beginning. What exactly is a transit visa? What is Australia even authorizing with this subclass 771?
So they're granting you permission for transit. That is the key word. It lets you pass through an Australian airport on your way to a third country.
A third country, okay.
Crucially, it means you have to stay inside the international transit area. You're not, officially entering Australia itself.
And the subclass 771 is just their name for it. It's free, and it's for stays up to 8 hours.
That's right. It's basically an administrative courtesy for travelers. But the big problem comes right away, which is figuring out if your passport even requires you to get it.
And this is where New Zealand residents get a huge shock. The idea that your residency status here is secondary. Sometimes it's almost irrelevant compared to your passport. Why is that? I mean, why doesn't Australia just recognize an NZ permanent resident status as enough for you to just sit in the airport for a few hours?
That's a great question. It really boils down to national sovereignty. While New Zealand might have its own rules, Australia gets to decide who crosses its border, even if it's just for a moment in transit. Your NZ residency proves you have the right to live here.
Right, here, not there.
Exactly. It doesn't automatically give you a waiver for Australian visa requirements.
So if you hold a passport from India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, the Philippines, China, which is, a huge number of NZ residents.
A very large number.
You are on the list of what they call non-exempt countries.
Precisely. And the source material is, well, it's crystal clear on this. If you hold one of those passports, even if you are a New Zealand permanent resident, you are treated as a foreign national for transit. You absolutely need the free subclass 771.
Even for a 90-minute stopover.
Even for 90 minutes.
But if you hold a New Zealand passport or maybe UK, US, Canadian, you're visa exempt, and you just skip this whole process.
Correct. You get to just breeze right through. And that's the big difference. The visa you hold here in New Zealand, whether it's for work or study or residency, it just doesn't change that fundamental rule. The passport is king.
That distinction is so critical. So, okay, let's move on to families. For anyone listening who's traveling with their kids, understanding that passport rule is really only half the story.
Yeah, this is where the bureaucracy can feel a little bit like overkill. The rule is solid. Every single individual needs their own separate visa application.
No family applications.
None. You can't group them together.
Wait, I have to challenge that a little.
Yeah.
Do the sources give any reason why, say, a 1-year-old child who's traveling with their permanent resident parents can't just be on the parents' form? It sounds needlessly complicated.
It does sound like it.
Yeah.
But the logic is rooted in international travel law. The visa, whether it's a 771 or a 600, is attached to a unique passport. Even an infant needs their own passport, right? So they need their own visa application tied specifically to that passport number. The system has to verify every single person.
So that example from the sources, the family of 4, Auckland to Delhi via Sydney, all holding Indian passports.
Yes.
Even if one of the kids was born here in New Zealand, all 4 of them need separate applications.
That's it. 4 separate subclass 771 applications, all submitted through the IMI account platform. Even the baby. This is why planning ahead is so important, because you're not just filling out one form, you're doing multiples.
Okay, so we've covered who needs the visa based on their passport. Now I have to talk about the layover time, because this decides which visa you need. And this is where cheap flights can create a really expensive hidden problem.
Absolutely. There are two main triggers that will instantly bump you up from the free subclass 771 to the paid subclass 600 visitor visa.
Before we get to that, let's clear up one confusing thing from the sources. This idea that if your stop is under 8 hours and you stay in the transit lounge, maybe you don't need any visa at all.
Yeah, that rule exists in theory, but in practice, it's basically null for anyone with a non-exempt passport.
Why?
Because the sources are really clear that the airline you check in with here in Auckland is often required by Australian Border Force to see that 771 visa before they even give you a boarding pass.
So you could be denied boarding right here in New Zealand.
You risk being denied boarding. The best practice, if your passport is on that list, is just get the 771. Always.
Got it. Okay, so assuming you have the 7771 lined up, the free ride ends at the 8-hour mark.
That is the first big trigger. If your stop is more than 8 hours, the subclass 771 is invalid. You have to apply for the subclass 600 visitor visa, the tourist stream.
And the second trigger is that logistical nightmare that, most of us don't even think about. Baggage.
Exactly. And this is often the more common one. The 771 is only valid if you stay airside in that secure transit zone. The second you have to collect your baggage, you have to leave that zone. You have to physically pass through immigration and enter Australia for customs, even if you're just going to recheck the bag right away.
So if you step into Australia for 5 minutes to grab a suitcase, the 771 is no good.
It's no good. And this happens a lot if you're, say, switching from a full-service airline to a budget one that doesn't share baggage agreements, or if the layover is so long, the airport makes you collect your luggage.
Wow. So that super cheap flight with a 12-hour overnight layover could actually force you into the most complicated paid visa application. That's the definition of a hidden cost.
Yeah, think of the 771 like a temporary parking permit for your plane. It's free, it's easy. But if you stay too long, or if you have to move your car, you suddenly need a full entry permit. That's the subclass 600.
And that's not just more expensive, it's a much harder application.
Much harder, because you're actually applying to temporarily enter the country, not just pass through it.
Let's use those two examples from the sources to make this really clear.
Okay. Example 1. We have that family with Indian passports flying Auckland to Sydney. They have a 3-hour wait, and their bags are checked all the way through to Mumbai.
Simple. Clean. Under 8 hours, staying airside, bags are handled. They just need the free, individual subclass 771 transit visas.
Perfect. Now, example 2. Same family, same passports. But they fly Auckland to Melbourne and have a 12-hour wait before the next flight to Ahmedabad. And crucially, they have to exit, collect their bags, and check them in again.
Okay, so because the stop is over 8 hours and they have to exit for their luggage, they are forced into the more expensive, more complex subclass 600 visitor visa.
Yes. The difference between that 3-hour stop and that 12-hour stop could be hundreds of dollars in visa fees and way more prep time.
It's so important to check your airline's baggage agreements when you're booking those flights.
Absolutely, especially if you're mixing carry-ons.
Okay, that really clarifies the difference. So now that we've probably scared everyone into realizing they need the 7711, how do you actually apply? This doesn't sound like something you can rush.
No, you can't. The good news is the application for the free 771 is all online. But you have to follow the steps perfectly.
Step 1. Go to the Australian Department of Home Affairs website and create an account on their platform. It's called the IMI account.
Right. That's your portal for everything. Step 2 is starting a new application and making sure you select subclass 771 transit visa. Selecting the wrong one will cause instant delays.
And step 3 is uploading all your documents. What do they need to see?
They need a clear copy of your passport, the main page, a copy of your full flight itinerary showing the transit and the final destination. They need the visa for that final country, so in our case, the visa for India.
And they need proof of your status here in New Zealand.
Critically, yes, your current New Zealand visa.
So you have to prove you're just transiting, you're allowed to enter your final destination, and you have a legal right to be where you're coming from.
Exactly. And a little tip from the sources is about formatting. Make sure everything is a clear PDF or JPEG. And if you're doing this for your whole family, double check that the right passport is attached to the right person's application.
Right.
They see a lot of infant applications get denied just because the proof of travel wasn't perfectly clear.
So what about processing time? What should people be planning for?
Officially, it's usually between 1 and 10 days.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you can get approved in under 24 hours, but the source material has a huge warning about this.
Don't count on it.
Do not count on it. Since you need this visa confirmed before you can even check in for your flight out of New Zealand, you really need to apply at least 3 weeks before you travel, just for peace of mind.
Waiting till the week before you fly is just a recipe for disaster. You could lose a whole ticket.
I agree. And remember, if you realize you need the paid subclass 600, that whole process is longer, it's more expensive, and it requires way more documentation. So you'd need to allow even more time for that one.
That's incredibly helpful. Okay, let's do a quick summary of the main takeaways we've pulled from the sources today.
First and foremost, your passport, not your New Zealand residency, is what determines if you need an Australian transit visa. If your passport isn't on the exempt list, get the 771. Second, it's a bureaucratic necessity, but every single family member, from adults down to infants, needs their own separate application.
And finally, the clock and the baggage claim. Those are the two things that decide between a free visa and a paid one. If your layover is over 8 hours, or if you have to collect and recheck bags, you're almost certainly going to need that paid subclass 600 visitor visa.
Understanding this whole process is really the true shortcut to smooth travel. It just removes all that stress and the surprise costs before you even get to the airport.
It certainly is. And it brings up a really fascinating thought about global travel that just comes from that rule about rechecking bags. Given that the subclass 600 visitor visa becomes mandatory if you have to exit the secure zone, this rule can affect anyone, even people with visa-exempt passports.
That's true. So it makes you wonder, what other common long-haul routes, or maybe combinations of budget and full-service airlines, might accidentally force any traveler, even someone with a US or UK passport, to get a paid visitor visa just because the baggage logistics force them to physically enter the customs area? It's not the nationality then, it's the logistics that trip you up. Something to think about next time you look at a flight itinerary. Safe travels.